Hey everybody, welcome to Dad's Den of Pop Culture. We're taking a look at a somewhat forgotten movie based on a play called Ladies in Retirements from 1941, directed by Charles Vidor. I'm actually sure how you pronounce it now that I think about it. It's been described as a sort of Victorian thriller, a film noir, a psychological drama. And it has elements of all these things in it. I think primarily it is the portrait of a particular woman, her struggles, how she deals with them. And it has a rather interesting ending, I thought. A thoughtful ending. Let's go through the plot of the film and chat about it a little bit. And then at the end, I will sort of give my final thoughts on maybe what it all means. And maybe some of the good and some of the bad. There will be spoilers, although we'll start out without spoilers, kind of set things up, and then I'll kick the spoilers in when it's time. So let's get going on this one. First, we're going to roll through the credits starring Ida Lupino, Lewis Hayward, with Evelyn Keyes, Elsa Lanchester, Edith Barrett, Isabel Elsom, Emma Dunn, Clyde Cook, and Queenie Leonard. Don't find a lot of people named Queenie these days. Screenplay by Garrett Ford, and Reginald Denham. Now, Reginald Denham was one of the writers of the play that this is based on, along with Edward Percy. And it does play very much like a play. You definitely get that sense of it in the way it's staged, in the interior decoration, to some degree in the acting, although there are some nice shots. So they do take advantage of it being a film and not just a stage play. Music by Ernst Toch, musical director M.W. Stoloff, production design by David Hall. I believe he got an Academy Award, or at least a nomination for that. Photographed by George Barnes, ASC. Art direction Lionel Banks, maybe also an Academy Award there. Film editor Al Clark, costumes designed by Walter Plunkett. A Lester Cowan production. I do like the way Lester Cowan, the producer, gets a sort of, kind of a carrion crow, in association with Gilbert Miller, directed, like I said, by Charles Vidor. Okay. Our story begins in this lovely cottage in the marshes. You notice, very misty, kind of foggy, okay, kind of spooky looking. And a letter has been delivered to Ellen Creed, played by Ida Lupino. She is the main character of this story. She's reading it. She's deeply concerned because apparently she might have already won $1 million. No. There's something else in this letter. And in fact, because it's an old movie, they actually let us see it. And this does a couple things. It establishes that we are in 1885. While that is not called out specifically, there are certain subtexts to that are going to be important in this film. And you can see that it is about her sisters. They're staying somewhere else. She pays for them to stay there. And they are going to have to leave that house at once for the scandalous way they are acting. No, it's not like that. Don't worry. It's not that kind of movie. So we then meet Leonora Fisk. She is the older lady there. That's Lucy the maid. And Leonora Fisk is the owner of this cottage and the employer of Ellen. Okay? And so she interrupts Ellen, letting her know she's going to have to go into London on business. And Ellen's kind of preoccupied trying to figure out what she's going to do about her sisters being thrown out of the place they live. Okay, why is she taking care of her sisters? Well, we're going to find out about that. Now, this is something also, it is somewhat important. In the original play, the character of Ellen is 60 years old. Now, I'm not positive if her sisters are older or younger. They're older in this. They're probably older in that as well. Now, in the play, the character was played by a 40-year-old woman. In the film, Ida Lupino is 20 years old when she's playing this role. They've aged her character down to 40. And I think there are elements of the play that maybe work better with a 60-year-old than a 40-year-old, but it was a bit of a challenge for her to play a middle-aged woman at that age. They didn't use much in the way of makeup on her. It was, a lot of it had to do with the way she acted. And this does play a role in the story, and it plays a role in how you're going to think about this character as the story proceeds. And so she immediately starts off the film with a lie, and that is common to film noir. Starting things off with a lie or some other act like that, you kind of start digging that hole. She tells Fisk that the letter is from her sisters, that they're lonely, they haven't seen her for quite some time. And, you know, she wishes she could do something about it, and Fisk is not really biting on this until Ellen suggests maybe they could come for a visit. Oh, that's fine. That's fine. For a day or two. Well, obviously, a visit for a day or two is not going to solve Ellen's problem, but it's a start. Okay, so off she goes into, I believe, London for business. That's Bates driving the cart. He'll show up a few times in this film. Looks like it's going to be a really fun journey through the marsh. As Ellen leaves, a young rapscallion enters the story. Played by Lewis Hayward, this is Albert Feather. He watches Leonora Fisk from the window for a while. She's at the piano, and she's playing a selection from a brand new opera, The Mikado. And if you want to see more of The Mikado, go check out my review of the film Foul Play, which actually involves that opera. Very different from this movie. And so he watches for a while. It seems as though Leonora Fisk was maybe once an entertainer. And then he begins singing along, and this kind of, catches her attention. And she wants to know who this man is. What is he doing there? And he says, ask me in and I'll tell you. And she allows him in if he minds his manners. So he announces that he's there to see Ellen Creed on a personal matter and claims to be her nephew. And, well, he might be sort of her nephew. That's going to become a little cloudy later in the film. Fisk lets him know that his long walk to the house was a waste of time, as Ellen has gone to London on business for a few days. But that's going to be too late. So Fisk asks if she can help. And he responds, I wonder. And you get the idea he's not a good guy, and Fisk doesn't seem to pick up on it. Well, not entirely. Maybe she thinks, well, he's sort of a naughty boy, but, not dangerous by any means. He says he needs 12 pounds. That's kind of a shocking amount of money at that time. By tonight, because he's short at the bank where he works. And he's short because of a girl, an actress. And you kind of get the idea that this particular line he's using, well, A, is not entirely true, but also that he's tailored it to Leonora Fisk because he overheard her talking with Lucy about working in the theater and things of that nature. So she decides she's going to give him the 12 pounds. And she actually has some reasoning for that herself that maybe we'll talk about later. While she's upstairs getting a key, he sits at the piano, casually steals a little box that's sitting on there. So yeah, this guy's kind of a scumbag. And now Lucy enters, having heard a man singing, and she's immediately in Albert's sights. This is actually where we learn his name is Albert. Hayward does pretty well with the role. But like I said, I think maybe he lacks a little gravity. I could almost see Orson Welles in the role with that more sonorous voice of his. I could also see, if this was 20 years later in a Hammer film, I could see Oliver Reed playing the role. But he does pretty well with it, and it's kind of an interesting character. Well, Leonora gets back down with the key, and it turns out this old bake oven is where she keeps her money. It's kind of padlocked. Opens it up, gets the money out. Now, of course, This means a couple interesting things. Number one, though, Albert's getting the money, so he knows she's kind of a soft touch, but he also knows where she keeps the rest of her money. This may be a mistake on her part. And so Fisk now mentions that had he arrived a few days later, his other two aunts would be there. And he says, oh, the potty ones? Meaning kind of crazy. He says, oh, no, they're not dangerous, just, just a little bit off. So off Albert goes, swearing Leonora Fisk to secrecy about the loan of the 12 pounds and that he was ever there. So Ellen's not going to know. So Ellen returns with Emily and Louisa. Louisa, the kind of wide-eyed one there, is enchanted with everything, seems a bit scatterbrained, while Emily, played by Elsa Lanchester, is complaining about everything. The church bells, the marsh grass is too long. In 2025, these two would probably be making unhinged videos in their car and posting them to social media. So they speak of where they might be next year, and Emily responds, not London. You promised it would not be London. And Ellen promises nobody will ever beat them again like the woman in London did. Clearly, this trio have had a very difficult and very sad life. When Miss Fisk sees them, she remarks that they look harmless to Lucy. And even though Ellen warns them to sort of keep their mouths closed, don't speak too much, they're kind of weird right from the get-go. And you kind of get the idea this is not going to go well. I mean, 1 or 2 days visit, maybe, but there's no way Ellen's going to be able to stretch this out successfully to something longer than that, and certainly not make it permanent. Emily mentioning that she does not like Roman Catholics doesn't help, since Leonora Fisk is a Roman Catholic. And there's a line in the scene, I think by Louisa, about how, many things in this house are theirs. And it turns out that Ellen once owned a curio shop. And when things went bad, she basically had to sell all these things to Leonora Fisk and became her personal secretary. And that's how she's been paying for them to live in London. Well, of course, things do not go well. And from either side, Leonora is referring to them as the boobies, and they're destroying the place. And there's a little bit of a comedic nature to this. The Leonora Fisk and Lucy characters could be played for comedy. They really could, but they keep them real here. They're a little funny, but they don't go over the top, and I think that's really important to this. But the scene does convey the genuine problem of living with people who are not in their right minds. And as such, they don't really have any consideration for other people. They're very preoccupied in their own little worlds. So Fisk finally tells Lucy, I'm going to ask them to leave this evening. Now, meanwhile, they're out on the marsh with Ellen, enjoying life. Well, I mean, Emily isn't really enjoying life, but that's just because that's her character. And Louisa says, Ellen, this is the place you always promised us. You always promised us, which kind of makes you wonder, like, why did she do that exactly? So things come to an immediate head when Emily arrives at the house with a bundle of sticks. Now, she has this thing about she needs to clean up the marsh. She likes it tidy. So she's bringing all sorts of crap home. So she brings them. There's no place to put them, so she just dumps them on the floor. And Miss Fisk argues with her about the habit of bringing home all these odds and ends, and Ellen arrives in the middle of the argument. And at one point, Miss Fisk says, "This is the last straw. You'll drive me as crazy as yourselves." Which gets a sharp look from the trio before Louisa starts crying. And the argument continues between Ellen and Leonora, and it does get a bit nasty about money. Also about self-respect, because Fisk apparently has not led a blameless life. She was in the theater. Was she doing other things as well? We do know she receives an allowance from some wealthy man, and that's what kind of keeps her in this cottage in the first place. It's an unwise thing for Ellen to do, but you do get a sense of the frustration, the desperation, the stress that she's been under. So we also discover at this point that the sisters have now been there for 6 weeks. And I think we can also now, you can kind of understand where Miss Fisk is coming from. 6 weeks of those two would be pretty tough, especially if they're not blood relations to you, if you don't really owe them anything. It ends with Miss Fisk telling Ellen, get rid of your sisters, take a month's wages, and go with them. And this is met with a look of shock, which then turns into something else. Determination? Maybe determination, but maybe something more than determination. Now, we know that her sisters are, frankly, insane. Is Ellen perhaps a bit mad as well? Well, we'll find out. And at this point, we're going to turn the spoiler sign on. So be prepared as we move forward. That night, Ellen goes to Miss Fisk's room to try to smooth things over. She apologizes, tries to explain that her sisters were released into her custody by the police only if they remained in her personal care, or they would be put away forever in an insane asylum. And again, let's think about this. We're talking 1885. We're talking about Bedlam. We're talking about insane asylums that were really not very nice. And I mean, insane asylums have a bad reputation anyways, but 1885 insane asylums are really rough. You can really understand why she's so desperate to keep her sisters out of there, because she does love them. She begs Miss Fisk to let them stay in the attic. She'll never have to see them again. There'll be a separate entrance. I'll cook all the meals, etc. She's really fighting hard. And it is a grim and determined Ellen, though, who walks out of that room that night because Fisk refuses her. She's not going to put up with it anymore. So she's trapped between an irresistible force and an immovable object. Ellen explains to her sisters that night that regardless of what she said, she will not be sending them away. This is a nice shot. The shot moves closer and closer to Ellen's face. And as it does so, her sisters kind of fall into shadow. Look at that determination. Lupino does a really good job of this. So she's determined that she's not going to send them away. She doesn't seem to know exactly how she's going to accomplish this, though. But then you also kind of get the feeling, well, maybe she does know, but doesn't want to face it. The next morning finds the two weird sisters preparing for a picnic. Ellen wants them out of the house. And she's pondering, then the sisters, I should say, are pondering what might be hidden in the bake oven. Maybe there's treasures in there. Ellen pulls them aside to let them know she wants to be alone with Miss Fisk for a few hours. And Emily asks, is this why you also got Lucy out of the house? She goes, Lucy had a toothache. And she kind of responds a little sharply. Louisa says, this isn't true. And she gets this stare down from her sister. And she says, I said Lucy had a toothache. Louisa kind of backs off. Some stuff is getting ready to go down. Ellen is very tense here. And here comes her next lie. She tells the sisters that last night Miss Fisk decided to leave the marshes and sell the house to Ellen. What if she wants more than you're prepared to pay? I'm prepared to pay quite a big price, Emily. Yeah, no doubt. And then she makes them swear on a Bible to never repeat anything about Emily's buying of the house as long as they live. This is something Emily does not like. She's not real big on religion. So this is where you get that taste of the film noir again. The lies, and one lie building on another lie, and you're getting in deeper and you're getting in deeper to the point that you can't escape punishment, we'll say. if it all falls apart. So with the sisters gone, there's only to do the deed. Another really nice shot. They pull in close on her face. There are some resemblances to Hitchcock films here, and you kind of get the feeling, yeah, Hitchcock could have made this movie. Probably would have been a bit different, but it feels like the kind of film that in 1940 he would have maybe been making. I can't help but wonder if it's a script he had even considered at some point. So the house now appears empty. Leonora comes down the stairs, and she has a little wine and toasts that the weird sisters are thrown out of the house. She's very happy. Bad decision. And then she sits down to play her piano. Perfect cover for someone sneaking up from behind. Ellen creeps down the stairs slowly with a rope in her hand. She pauses for a moment and honestly does not look like a woman horrified by the deed that she is about to do. Maybe it's that desperation. But again, Ellen might also be just as nutty as her sisters are. And she moves forward, and then we hear a loud clang on the piano. We see pearls falling on the floor, and then this necklace falling. Okay, so it's taken us 40 minutes to get to the deed, almost half the movie. But I think this makes sense because I think they're really trying to give you a sense of what Ellen is going through, that how trapped she is, who her sisters are, etc. They really want to lay this down so the rest of the film will have more impact. We next see the household at a point where Fisk has been gone for a while. Two nuns have arrived wishing to see Ellen. There's a nunnery located very nearby. I think Miss Fisk leased some of her land to them. Louisa hurries off to fetch Ellen. They've come looking to borrow some oil because their supply has not yet arrived. And we learn here that Lucy is still serving in the household. And when she set out to fetch the oil from the shed, Albert Feather shows up once again and startles her. He learns that Fisk isn't here. His three aunts are, and that they don't know that he's ever been here. In other words, she says, no, we never told. After the nuns leave, Emily worries that Ellen is changing, that she might go in league with the nuns against her and Louisa. So she blows the candles out on a little altar that Miss Fisk had kept lit, and now Ellen is keeping lit. And we know why Ellen is keeping it lit. It's in remembrance of the woman that she murdered. So we get a great shot of her illuminated by a flash of lightning here. It's a very volatile situation you're in. You have a woman, desperate, murdering another woman on behalf of two women whose own lack of sense could well doom this entire project to failure. It's like she doesn't exactly have any reliable allies here, and it's going to get so much worse. At this moment, Albert knocks on the door and lets himself in. He introduces himself, and Emily and Louisa are very happy that he's there. They remember him. He was always fun. He was always funny. Ellen is not so thrilled to see him. She knows what this guy is all about, but also there's that whole hiding a murder thing that she has to worry about. And so when it comes to, retrieving brandy from the cellar because it's cold and rainy out there and blah, 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 Ellen insists that she do it. Why does she not want him to go down into the cellar? Interesting. Albert follows her down and inquires about Fisk's whereabouts. Perhaps he suspects something. She is acting a little bit guilty. Or maybe he just knows that Fisk is such a soft touch, and that's who he wants to see, because he's not liable to get anything out of Ellen. But it's an interesting scene. And there's also a bit where kind of hitting on his aunt here. Now, I don't think you'd get that if she's playing a 60-year-old woman. But it is Ida Lupino, and she's supposed to be 40 here, but it's still kind of weird. Why would he be doing that? The adoration that her aunts have for this nephew really worries her. And, every murder has a complication, and this is a really big one. And so you could already see, like with film noir, things are beginning to close in. And like most film noirs, you get the feeling that escape is not really imminent. So indeed, Albert has lost his job at the bank, big shock, for stealing, and is looking for another soft touch. And you have to love that Ellen, who has committed murder, is being very judgmental towards the thief. But here's the worst thing. The police are after him, and that gets her. Perhaps they'll show up at the cottage. She does not want the police there. He wants to stay until the heat is off, and then some help escaping from the country. And there are a couple of revelations here. Ellen is not a flesh and blood relative of Albert. And in fact, the other two are not as well. Okay. So they're not really aunts, which explains his slightly lascivious behavior, which she rebuffs. She also does not like to be touched. That will come up a little bit later on. But okay, so she's a little bit eccentric maybe, but also she's maybe, well, it's 1885. She would have been younger in the 1870s, but you don't know what she's gone through. It may not have been particularly pleasant. She also asks Albert, "You didn't do anything else, did you? There are worse things than stealing." And he says, "No, I don't have any blood on my hands. Killing takes real nerve." It sure does. As soon as Ellen has left and gone to bed, she agrees that he can at least stay the night. Albert begins trying to pick the lock on the old bake oven, knowing that Fisk kept money and jewelry in there, and he's successful, but in opening it discovers it has been bricked up. Okay, that's kind of weird. Well, I think all of us know why that was done and when it was done. The next scene is very short. It is Ellen and Louisa being driven home by Bates from church, and I think is meant to reinforce the guilt that is settling down on Ellen. She committed murder, but she feels very guilty about it. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean we're supposed to go, "Oh, well, she's okay then." No. But it is supposed to give you an idea of her mental state. The tension is getting worse. And meanwhile, back at the cottage, Lucy catches Albert, testing the bricks in the oven. Like, can he get through them? Can he take them down? And she's surprised to find that the bricks are there as well. She didn't know about it. Well, of course, she was out when Ellen did all of this. Well, maybe Fisk did it when she left to protect her treasures so nobody could steal them. Okay, well, maybe. And while they're talking and flirting, Albert finally plants one on Lucy, and in the ensuing hijinks, they discover that Fisk did not take her best wig with her when she left. And she left most of her fancy dresses. Very strange. Why wouldn't she take those things? When Emily returns to the house, she brings a letter that is addressed to Miss Fisk, and Albert quickly purloins the letter. Emily lets Albert in on the secret that Ellen has bought the house and Miss Fisk is not coming back. Well, that makes the whole thing even weirder. If she's not coming back, why would she have left things here? So again, very noir, secrets falling into the hands of evil people. Definitely a noir thing. Well, the nuns show back up from the priory, and Emily gets scarce. She does not like nuns or any religious people, and Albert wants to hide his presence as well, but he ends up talking with them and gathers more clues to the facts that Ellen is not being honest about things. And finally, he steams open the letter along with Lucy, and it is from the bank. Her signature, Fisk's signature, on a check does not match her normal signature. The check is made out to Ellen Creed and is from only 3 days ago. Very strange. When Louisa and Ellen return, the topic of hell comes up. Louisa asks where it is. Ellen responds, this is a great line, "Hell is like the kingdom of heaven. It's within." Ooh, yeah. She's not doing well with all this. She's not doing well with all this at all. And another clue, Louisa lets Albert know that Miss Fisk didn't like them and she was horrid to them. Ooh, we're getting, motive, etc. Okay. So Ellen asks Albert not to mention Miss Fisk to her sisters. Again, he asks if she's the friend she lit the candles for, and she confirms it. So he asks when she died. Die? Who said anything about her being dead? That look on her face is telling. Not quite what you would expect, considering the guilt she's been showing about Miss Fisk and her usual annoyance at Albert. There's a kind of calm on her face. I thought that was very interesting. Albert watches in pleasure as she reads the letter that he's already read. Her cool quickly evaporates. He's really starting to put the pressure on her now. And when she leaves with her response to the letter, which she blotted with one of those old blotters, Albert grabs the blotter and he uses it to read the letter with Lucy. And now she knows as well that Ellen is pretending to be Miss Fisk, possibly just to steal from her. And Albert takes the leap. Perhaps Fisk is dead, and Ellen is the only person who knows about it. Now, he hasn't leapt to her being a murderer, just that Fisk is dead and nobody else knows. Albert wants a piece of this little racket, but he needs proof, and Lucy can help him. But Albert has left the blotter over by this mirror. And so when Ellen returns, she discovers it, and she figures out what he was doing, and this puts her into a panic. Somebody is getting close. We next see Albert one night chipping away at those bricks in the oven while Lucy plays lookout. Ellen returns before he gets too far. She lets him know that she has a ticket for him on a train. He's going to be going to Canada. He leaves tomorrow. Albert knows he has to move fast now, and Lucy's in it with him completely. Now, and she even says, well, I'm in it with you completely, whether I want to be or not. So you go, well, she's in love with him. Is there maybe something else going on? Either way, poor girl, she is rather innocent in this whole thing. She's a little maybe scatterbrained, but she doesn't deserve any bad things that are going to happen to her. The sisters tell Ellen that they've heard odd noises from downstairs tonight, and she asks them if they've let slip about the purchase of the house. And Emily straight out lies to her. No, you made us swear on a Bible we wouldn't. So again, when your accomplices are both insane, it's a pretty dangerous situation to be in. Downstairs, Ellen and Albert chat about his impending trip to Canada, and he resists the idea. Ellen says that now that Sister Teresa knows that he's here, talk in the village could lead to the police coming out there to look for this runaway, this fugitive. But he doesn't want to go, and how can she avoid scandal if she calls the police to have him thrown out? He thinks, I've got her in a pickle, and not unlike the pickle that Miss Fisk had her in. I know I keep saying Miss Fisk. I sound like Popeye. And now Albert clues her in on his suspicions. Ellen tries to kind of brazen it out. Look at that face there. And tells him that Miss Fisk is coming back. This shakes him a bit for a moment. She continues, she didn't say it. Oh, she didn't tell him before, because it means that Emily and Louisa will have to go as well. So she's kind of like throwing a little monkey wrench into his plans here. Albert might not buy the story completely, but it's given him some thinking to do for just a moment. But he plays a hunch and taps on the oven door to see Ellen's reaction. And it shakes her a bit, and he notices. And as she and he part, he leaves her with one thought, a funny dream he had the night before, that Miss Fisk was dead. And oh boy, something is going to give. She is losing her nerve in a big way. That night, she is awakened by somebody playing Titwillow on the piano. This is the song that Fisk was playing when Albert first met her, and has obviously played quite a bit of. She rather likes it. And so Albert knows this is a song she would play. And so clearly, this battle of wills is going on, and Albert thinks that he has the better of her. when Ellen comes downstairs, she sees what she believes to be Miss Fisk at the piano. Now, it's actually Lucy in Fisk's clothes and her wig. And screwing with a possibly insane murderess is maybe not the best plan. But again, I don't think they think she's a murderer at this point. I think she's just running a con. Ellen screams and faints, and Albert looks on triumphantly. He's got her. So when Bates arrives the next morning to pick Albert up, take him to the train, he's informed to cancel it. Miss Creed's not feeling well, so Albert's going to hang around and help. And Lucy looks kind of disturbed at all of this. Like, she's part of this, but she's not real happy about being part of it. The sisters come down, and they're upset at Ellen's condition. She says she saw a ghost. And the sisters know something happened because they also heard the music as well. So it's not just like a nightmare that she had. Louisa thinks Miss Fisk wants to return and turn them out. And Emily thinks maybe Miss Fisk is here now. What's right behind her shoulder there while she's saying all of this? And you know, there kind of is a ghost haunting this place, isn't it? Ellen tries to console the two, sends them off to take a walk. And when they leave, she slowly approaches the oven. And as she touches the door, she's surprised by Albert. She's losing her nerve here. She gets a hold of herself, though, and inquires about why he hasn't left yet. She's angered to learn that he's canceled the trip. And through this scene, you start wondering if Albert isn't maybe starting to overplay his hand. But then he lets her see the wig on the piano. And you get this nice sweeping close-up of Ellen. You know. Yes, and he figures he'll stick around, supported financially by Ellen, and they could be a happy little family. And there's a great scene here, because now he's pretty convinced that, yeah, she committed murder, and that body is in that oven. The clues are all there. And Ellen asks them, she goes, "You want to go on living here with me? How could you ever be sure? You might not enjoy your meals." And that kind of gets him, but he doesn't think she dare commit murder again. And she says, "It takes a lot of courage to kill for the first time, Albert. But once you've sold your soul to the devil, it gets easier, much easier." Great line, great delivery. And Albert now realizes he's got a tiger by the tail. And he blinks. He says, "Okay, give me 500 pounds and I'll leave." But Ellen's fear of him is now gone. And you get this seesaw between the two of them. Who has the upper hand? Who doesn't have the upper hand? Well, this little scene is broken up by the arrival of the nuns. They must speak with Ellen. The police have been to the priory. They're searching for Albert. And Sister Teresa figures from the description, this is the guy that they saw here at the cottage. And she thought if he were told, he might do the right thing, give himself up. She doesn't know him very well, does she? Every time a sort of balance between Ellen and Albert is achieved, or every time Ellen gets the better of him, it's immediately upset. So it's this roller coaster kind of ride. I'm mixing metaphors. It's a seesaw. It's a roller coaster. What isn't it? So Albert is going to run off. Problem solved. We've gotten rid of Albert. But now Lucy appears from upstairs. She heard it all. Nothing can go right when you have done wrong. So at Ellen's approach, Lucy screams and runs away. Albert comes in when he hears the scream. And he finds that Lucy has run and she knows everything and clearly is running to the police. And his response is, "Turn me in, will she?" So he's always thinking of himself. But then he realizes that she heard everything. And Ellen is deflated. And she stares at the altar vacantly while Albert hurries to leave. And he's like, "Come on, we got to both go. We got to both get out of here." But Ellen isn't leaving. And Albert seems to get a strange respect for her here. Like, damn, this woman is a lot tougher than I am. He's just a con man. He's not a murderer. He's a thief. What she's done, ooh, man. And finally, this strange calm comes over Ellen. It's entered her life, and she awaits the police. And the sisters at this point return home from being out on the marshes, and they're laughing, and they saw Albert playing tag with some strange men, and they caught him. And Ellen calmly tells them that she's leaving to see some gentlemen. And she gives them each a kiss goodbye, very calmly. And she smiles as they remain unaware of what is happening, like happy children, just da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And Ellen turns, and off she goes into the mist with the gallows in her future. Here's the last look at the cast. So, I'm going to leave spoilers up because I want to talk about the ending. Ellen has basically given everything to these sisters. Could she have had a better life? Who knows? Well, no, we do know. She could have had a much better life. Would it have involved a husband and children and all that kind of stuff? And, very full, but maybe not. Maybe she was going to be a loner her whole life with her little curio shop, but clearly better than this. But what's interesting to me is, and this, at first, the ending was sort of unsatisfactory to me. She's done everything to protect her sisters from going to an insane asylum. She murdered somebody. She would have probably murdered Albert if she could have. And in the end, she kind of gives up. And, I got to thinking about it, and it's that kind of an ending. It's a thinking ending. It's not just saying, here it all is, or here's a happy ending, or whatever. It's like, what now? And I think she finally surrendered. I think she finally gave up. Yeah, her sisters are going to probably end up in an insane asylum. She's going to be hanged for what she's done. I don't think she cares. Because, she's given it all up for these two. And they don't care. In fact, they worked against her. And I think she's just sort of like, all right, that's it. I'm done. And that's that weird calm. And I don't think it's a matter of like, I'm going to ask for forgiveness from God, etc. And I think the calm is because she doesn't care anymore. Everything has gone wrong in this woman's life. Can you imagine? It's over. It's over. She's lost. And she doesn't care anymore. But, watch the movie. And if you do, let me know what you think of the ending. I'd love to hear that in the comments because I think it's all very debatable. It's a very interesting ending to this film. All right, let's take the spoilers down for a moment. And we'll take the slide off too. Ladies in Retirement. It's a good film. It is well shot. The art direction, interior decorating is really quite good. That's why the Academy Award nominations happened. It is well played. I think everybody in it plays it very, very well. And it's, yes, there's elements of a film noir in what's happening for sure. Victorian mystery, yeah, it's the setting. But I think it's primarily a drama about this woman and her life and the things it's driven her to and the way it's hollowed her out. So there's a psychological element to it for sure. But it's very good in that regard. I think the stumbling block most people are going to have is that ending. Because on one level, like I said, it doesn't feel very satisfactory. But again, watch the film. There's so much. It's a film that's not about the destination. It's about the journey. So enjoy that journey. And again, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on the ending of the film. I think it's worth watching. No, it's not the greatest film ever made by any means, but worth watching. And Ida Lupino does a really great job with the character. So much work on her face of the emotions and that roller coaster and the of first she's calm and then she's guilty and then she's, threatened and then she's, she does a fantastic job. Elsa Lanchester's great in it as well. They all are great in this movie. It's really well acted. It's well directed. Well worth your time. But like I said, check it out. Let me know in the comments what you think, or if you've already seen it, I'd love to hear what you think about this film. I think it really deserves more attention. It's kind of a hidden gem. But that will pretty much do it for me. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like, maybe subscribe, maybe share with a friend if you think they'd be interested in this. Maybe you got a friend who's just an absolute fanatic for this film, and you could share this with them and they could watch it and think, what does this guy know? Oh my, he's lost all the more subtle. Okay. And I'd love to hear from that friend because I'd love to learn more about this film. But anyways, until next time, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun out there. I won't exactly say watching this movie is fun, but it is a really good film. And I will hopefully see you again soon in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.